Okay, cool beans. Thank you guys. Really
I
appreciate it.
I,
Or
I
do you have
just
something
noticed. I would say I just noticed Joe's shirt. So you don't have Sonic, but we don't have Del Taco.
Well, so this. We don't have much. Well, I think there's one by the airport, but I grew up at Del Taco in Huntington Beach.
Most unlikely of villains, schools of pain and for pause. Does it talk? Does it know how? Does it bottle? Does it meow? Let on the cerebral. Heaven show him so much more. Release your brains at the door.
Now it is safe to talk about the evil rebellion that he's off there. We can talk about all the poor plumbers that were killed by the rebellions blowing up the Death Star.
Hey, they knew who they were working for.
They were just contractors with a
They
government
knew who
contract.
they were
trying to
working
feed
for,
their
man. They
kids.
chose sides.
The legitimate government. Come on.
What happens? What happens when a representative of Emperor Palpatine shows up and says, "You're going to build toilets," and they're allowed to say, "No, thanks. We'll pass on that contract."
Hey,
No,
if you don't if you don't like not having an Imperial Senate, you only have Jar Jar Binks to thank for that. That was
I
a
think that's
legitimate
fair.
government
That's
action.
that's fair. That's blame fairly laid.
Yep.
Jar Jar is the worst thing that ever happened in cinema ever.
There we go. That's a tall claim. I don't know if I can quite go that far, but he might be the worst thing in Star Wars. I don't even know if he's the worst thing in Star Wars, actually.
I had read that Goofy is George Lucas's favorite Disney character, and Jar Jar and the Roger droids were his attempt to slip Goofy into his movie.
Wow.
I could see that. You know
the
what? You
droids
can
worked.
see it.
They were kind of stupid, but the droids kind of worked, but not
Yeah.
Jar Jar.
Well, yeah, especially the droids, because didn't they have like antenna that kind of flopped a little bit? And
Yeah.
yeah, I could definitely see that.
Okay.
Wow. I hadn't read that, but that makes sense actually when you think about it.
It makes a sad sense.
It does make a sad sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I can go with Jar Jar's worst thing that happened to cinema. There are other things out there that, but he's pretty bad.
I mean,
I'll agree with that.
Morbius, the living vampire movie, was my son and I. My son and I went to see that just to mock it. We were in the back row having our own father-son Mystery Science 3000.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Look at like your later Transformer movies. Come on.
Yeah, no, those are all awful. All of them.
Yeah. There's some horrible things out there in cinema.
I don't think I've seen the last one. One ties in King Arthur. I've seen Bumblebee.
Oh, the first night one. Yeah.
But the one with the Dinobots,
Mhm.
I actually, without even realizing what I was doing, pulled my phone out and checked my work email for 30 minutes. I was so bored.
Yeah.
That sucks, dude.
Yeah. So I guess this is just folks, if you blundered into this and you're wondering what the heck's going on, this is a bonus episode of Cerebrivore. I'm Jason of Nerds RPG Variety Cast. I'm joined with BJ Boyd of Arcane Alienist and Joe of Hindsightless. And we're here. Joe doesn't have a last name. No, it's Joe Richter of Hindsightless. But anyway, we're here just talking about stuff. We're filling in, giving you a bonus episode. This is just random babble about RPG and nerd culture. And I'll put some in the show notes. You'll see what the spoilers are. We're probably going to spoil Obi Wan a little bit. We might spoil Stranger Things season 4 a little bit. So if you haven't seen those shows, you might want to wait to listen to this till after that. How are you gentlemen doing tonight?
Doing good.
Yeah, doing good, man. Thanks.
Excellent.
How are you?
Long day, but I've got about 5 fingers of whiskey in my Coke here, so I'll be okay. You know,
Nice.
I'll
Is that a Sonic cup?
Yep, it's Sonic Cup. It is. I stopped and got they have like a foot long quarter-pound hot dog
Mhm.
that I got.
I've had one of
Tater
those.
tots and yep.
Sonic has this thing. They only have it every now and then, and I think most places in America have Sonic at this point. They started in Oklahoma. Like I used to, where I went to college was the town that had the first Sonic ever.
Yeah, we don't
But
have Seattle.
so, but they had this ultimate. It's like crack for me. So it's a tortilla. That several years ago they started doing breakfast burritos. So every now and then they'll try to come up with a new ways to use the ingredients they have in the shop. And then they've always done Frito chili pie. So it's Frito chili pie wrapped up in a tortillas. It is so good.
That sounds awesome.
Like, I could eat like 12 of them and not.
I might make that for dinner tomorrow.
But it's only maybe once a year they have them for about a month.
So I don't know if we're going to totally spoil Obi Wan. I mean, Obi Wan's one of those stories that, to be honest, that didn't need to be told anyway. Because like as Joe said, well, Joe, why don't we need to tell? What's the problem with Obi Wan?
Well, the spoiler is he survives. Like, where are the stakes, man?
Yeah. You're
I
not
haven't
wrong.
seen it. To be fair, I haven't seen it, but
so this is a minor spoiler. They do have young Princess Leia in there. One thing they've done right in this is the actress is 8 or 9. I think she was 8 and she turned 9 during the filming of the series, but she's supposed to be 10 in the series. So that way, if they do a season 2 or 3, then she's not going to age out like the Stranger Things kids have now kind of aged out.
Yeah, they're all 18 trying to pass up. Well, it's like being in the 80s again. It's an homage to the 80s. You have legal adults trying to play, 9th graders.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so they look older. So hopefully, and all the actors in the Obi-Wan is cool. They're doing a good job. And the cool thing with Obi-Wan is you have Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan, and you've got is it Jimmy Smits, right? As
it's Bail Organa.
Yeah, Bail Organa. So you see like real actors, they're not.
Well, you have Hayden Christensen doing the scenes of Darth Vader when his mask is off, and you have James Earl Jones doing his voice when this may be James Earl Jones' last outing is. I don't know how long.
Yeah, how much longer he has left? Yeah. So James Earl Jones is a U.S. Ranger. You know that?
Cool.
Yeah.
He was a big buff strap in his youth and in his prime. He was.
Right on. So you guys have both seen Obi-Wan?
I've seen the first 2 episodes. I think another one dropped the day
Another one dropped today. I watched it on my lunch hour.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm watching with my wife. Like, we haven't had a chance.
Despite the fact that he survives, right? Because obviously, is it okay at least? Is it good?
I think I think it's been pretty good, and I think what's happening is Dave Filoni, who's kind of now the creative director at Lucasfilm, who did the Clone Wars animated series and the Rebels animated series, he's kind of going back in with his projects, and he's filling in this period right before episode 3 and right after episode 5.
Well, the other way around, right?
Right
after 3, before 4.
Right after 3 and right after 6. That's what. I got the numbers wrong. So that period right before the original trilogy and right after, and he's completing some of the stories that were left undone in the Clone Wars and Rebels, and he's really getting in, a lot of it's focused on how do we get to the Rebel Alliance, because we've got Obi-Wan, and then we've got another show coming out next year about is it Cassian Andor, who was one of the main characters in Rogue One.
Okay.
They're filling those gaps as to what happened.
Yes. So far, it's been pretty good. I don't know that we want to go in deep spoilers to any of this stuff, but so far it's been pretty good. I think the biggest hurdle actually is knowing that in 10 years, Ewan McGregor is going to look like Sir Alec Guinness, and that's a hard jump. I know the desert ages you. I know the desert's hard on people, but I that's a big jump.
I don't know how big of a jump it is, man. Like, think about how much we've all aged in the past 6 years. It's been a rough 6 years for us, and we're not trapped in a desert.
Well, I think you look at pre and post, like the day somebody takes the oath of office as president, and the day they leave office. Yeah, I think Obi-Wan's out there in the desert trying to protect Luke Skywalker from the Empire. Maybe it will take a toll.
Well, you're not wrong. And a great example that we've all seen was Barack Obama, right?
Yeah,
he goes in, one of your youngest presidents, a young man, and he came out, he aged.
Yeah.
Those years wore on that man.
Yeah, they were tough. Yeah.
There's no question. So yeah, you're right. That's a great analogy. I'm enjoying it. I think it's fine. It's but I don't know. It's okay.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what it did remind me, which I knew, but this is a spoiler for the show, but it helped reinforce, like all the Star Wars stuff does, really, when you think about it. One of the big differences, Star Wars always gets compared to Star Trek, but one of the big differences is Star Wars is not a post-scarcity society. In Star Wars, you have people scrabbling for resources. You have the dead poor. You have the oppressed, things like that. Star Trek, in theory, at least with Earth and the Federation, right, in theory, is post-scarcity. You have transporters, and you have machine. What do you call the machine that makes all the stuff? Replicators. And so in Star Trek, in theory, you don't have money, you don't need money, and you don't want for anything, right? In theory, and that's a huge difference between the two, and that would make a huge difference in all kinds of philosophy.
And you were saying Obi Wan kind of reinforces it's not that way in Star Wars.
Well, it shows the poverty.
Yeah, it shows the poverty.
People living on Tatooine and other planets, and then this latest episode. I don't think this is too big of a spoiler, but there's some commentary in the latest episode about the Empire was supposed to fix all of this, and they made it worse.
Okay.
In terms of people's rights and people's prosperity and things like that.
Yeah. There's also a big, at least in the second episode, especially because they're at a city. It's not like a super cyberpunk vibe, but a little bit of a cyberpunk vibe too. Like that Blade Runner kind of.
I think there's some visual
cities and stuff. Yeah,
I think there's some shots that are visual homages to Blade Runner.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool.
And there's a scene where Ewan McGregor's daughter interacts with him as a spice dealer, and it's like an homage to Trainspotting.
Yeah, it is.
A little.
Yeah, just a throwaway scene, but if you know what it is, I picked that. I didn't know that was his daughter at first, but I picked up the Trainspotting. You've seen Trainspotting, haven't you, Joe?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh, okay.
There's several scenes that I'm thinking of right now that I'm sure some of them are not in the Disney Plus movie.
No, that is correct. Yeah, but no, it's pretty good.
Something that was refreshing to me, and I don't know if this might open up a bigger discussion of how you play heroes versus anti-heroes versus amoral characters in role-playing games, is I felt like in the original trilogy, there was very clearly there was a difference between good and evil.
Yeah.
When you got into, I don't know if this is more reflective of our society, because I don't think it's in the movies, during the prequel, because we all know that movie is about how Anakin ultimately makes the wrong decision and gives over to the dark side. So much of the advertising around the prequel tie-in products, whether it was action figures or lunch boxes or Happy Meal toys or whatever, it was about you must choose, you must choose, you must choose. And they almost glorified the Sith. And the Sith are pretty cool. I mean, those are some cool characters. But I feel like it shifted the fandom a little bit to where it was okay to identify with the Sith, whereas before everybody's like, oh no, Darth Vader looks cool, but he is clearly the villain.
Right.
I don't know if you guys ever saw that or not, but in this one, they've kind of gone back to, it's pretty clear that the Inquisitors are evil, and Obi Wan is a hero. He's a kind of a struggling hero because everything fell apart around him. In the last movie, but it seemed kind of refreshing to see Star Wars back to going, look, the dark side is evil and the light side is good.
It definitely feels more akin to the original trilogy. They're definitely trying to tie into that original trilogy feel, and not totally, because the Inquisitors and stuff don't totally buy into that, but it definitely feels more of a reach to that than the prequels or the follow-on trilogy. So,
and if there's any way you want to make it obvious that a group is bad, you call them Inquisitors. That's just like, there's no good Inquisitors.
That's true. Yeah, they're pretty obvious, and the way they've got them dressed, they each, there's those homages like to Darth Vader's look. When third sister has like the chest plate, and who is he, fifth brother, whatever, has like the belt like with flashing lights, and so it looks like they're all wearing like pieces of Darth Vader's armor.
Nice.
It's but not as cheesy as I just made it sound, but it's like, there's no question they're bad guys. I mean, when you see them, Yeah, there's no ambiguity there at all. So yeah, it's but that's interesting. That well, I mean, it's a whole. But as role players, I mean, we always like to play. Not we, but most people do like to play that in that gray area, right? And maybe that's because of the era growing up with anti-heroes, with things like Wolverine and the Punisher and whatnot, right?
I mean, honestly, I don't. All my heroes are good guy. Like whenever I play, I always play like a good guy.
I try to play neutral characters sometimes, and I wind up defaulting into hero mode just because there's so many. They're much more. The plot hooks are a lot easier to deal with in most role playing games if you just try to be a hero.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because you look at D&D, and one of the interesting, at least first edition AD&D, I can't speak to later editions, but I know in first edition AD&D, when you look at the magic items, there are more magic items that are beneficial to a good character or a lawful good character, specifically than to evil characters or to neutral characters. You know what I mean? The preponderance of like whatever items like veers towards good. So they're kind of pushing you that way also.
Yeah. Second edition, kind of in response to the Satanic Panic, by the time second edition, we had gone back to demons and devils and necromancers and things. But originally they renamed demons and devils to something else in the monster manual and stripped out any reference
or something, right?
And they got rid of the assassin class. They got rid of half orcs so that there was no discussion of the tragedies which give rise to half orcs. They really tried to sanitize it to try to get away from some of the Satanic Panic stuff. But you could still play an evil character. I mean, he was still an option in the player's handbook, but I think there was a sidebar about you can play an evil character, but it's really not very fun. You should play a heroic character.
Right.
By the time Planescape came around, everybody was back into moral ambiguity and relativism and things like that. But early on, they were really trying to get away from that.
I mean, that's something that so Stranger Things, again, we don't want to do a lot of spoilers, but the Satanic Panic does play into the fourth season of Stranger Things a little bit. They allude to that. One thing, folks, if you haven't seen it, it's, I would say, it's definitely an R-rated movie level of, Stranger Things is harder. Season 4 is more of an R-rated movie. Yeah.
The first few seasons were kind of, they were still,
I'd say like PG-13, right?
Yeah, there were monsters and they were kind of gross to look at, and effects that were kind of horrible to look at, but they were brief. This one has a lot more blood.
And it lingers on blood. Some really. Oh, I talked over you. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it lingers on some of the horrible scenes.
Yeah,
and then there's just a lot more blood splattered and blood on people's clothes and blood on people's hands.
Yeah, it's definitely more of a harder. So, like the early seasons,
into the horror movie.
Yeah, you might watch earlier seasons like with your kid. I don't know if I'd watch season 4 with younger kids.
Nice.
Right. I think I'd get to, they need at least, like maybe 13, 14, but not younger than that. Not preteens, probably.
Would you say, because I haven't seen this yet either, would you say this is the heaviest D&D influence season?
Yeah, I would. Well,
I heard that.
I think in the first season they made references to D&D. They were like using D&D terms to describe what they were seeing.
There's more D&D in some of the earlier seasons, like the game, than there is in this one. Like through multiple episodes. This one, I mean, one of the bad guy they're using, but they've used the D&D term to refer to the bad guy in all the seasons.
Yeah,
be it a mind flayer, be it a Demogorgon, or right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's more.
I think this is the bad guy in this movie. The villain is not a lich, but it's a lot closer. Like whereas before they were just grabbing whatever monster they'd been fighting that week.
Yeah,
this villain is probably a little more Vecna-like than the Demogorgon and Stranger Things is like Demogorgon. Or
okay,
yeah, definitely, I agree with that. And so, folks, if you don't want to hear a spoiler, maybe don't listen for the next, skip ahead 30 or skip ahead a minute maybe. But one thing I'm interested to see what they do is how they tie I guess we'll just say Vecna. We don't want to spoil everything, but how they tie Vecna with the Mind Flare from the early season. Because if the Mind Flare is a minion of Vecna, that's going to be a big turnoff to me.
Yeah. I think all those spider references, full prediction. I think either by the end of this season or the fifth and final season, Lolth is going to be the inspiration for Lolth. Because I think Vecna is going to wind up being like a servant of Lolth.
Maybe, yeah. I'll be disappointed if the Mind Flare ended up being something Vecna came up with, because it seemed to me like something that should have been there a lot longer. Been hanging around waiting for, but we'll see. But I mean, it's good. The bad thing, Joe, with Stranger Things, and we're kind of out of the spoiler territory now, folks, but is the idea that, so they showed 7 episodes in the end of May, right? But there are 2 more episodes they're not going to show till July.
Right.
Which is kind of crappy.
Yeah. Well, I thought there was a full another 7. There's only 2.
I think, or maybe there are 7. I don't know how many more though. Maybe there are 7. I don't know. I haven't tracked.
But I also heard
I still want to see it all at once.
Yeah, I heard the last episode's supposed to be like 2.5 hours long, too.
Maybe.
I thought there were like 2 2-hour episodes coming. I don't know what there are.
Okay. Because these are before they've been 30, 45 minutes, and these are all like an hour and 20-minute long.
These are. Yeah, they're a little bit longer.
Okay.
But it's pretty good. But another thing we wanted to hit on, I guess, but Stranger Things is a little disappointing in that they're not doing D&D lore any favors here. So it's all first edition books, right? And the time frame is first edition because it's 1986 in the show, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how is one of the characters a 14th level half-elf rogue? Come on.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
Should have been a thief.
Yep. There weren't rogues.
A rogue. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no rogue class in first edition.
I think that was in even the first season when they referred to the Upside Down as the Shadowfell. I don't think the Shadowfell came into D&D terminology till 3rd edition, maybe.
Probably not. Yeah. So
certainly not in first edition.
Yeah. So 2 demerits there, but very much so.
On the other hand, it's done a lot to help raise the profile of D&D.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just a shame the starter set wasn't better.
Well, it's funny. Like our friend Jules from NZ, she was just telling me she just got a new gig. This group, these 2 couples were like, we love Stranger Things. We've never played D&D before. We want to pay someone to come teach us how to play D&D. And so, like, I mean, that's a real life example of how this show is like bringing people into the hobby. It's crazy.
And that's awesome. And I would bring up the paid DM thing, but I have a feeling it'd be a boring discussion because I think we all agree that if if you can make money and do a legitimate thing like what Jules is doing, if people are too busy and they just want somebody to teach them and they're willing to pay a DM to do that, I see zero problem with that.
Yeah,
I don't mind paid DMs in that capacity at all. The only thing I have an issue with is if you have organizations saying we're going to certify you as a DM and you're not a real DM unless you're certified by our made up organization. That bothers me. But paid DMs, like in that case, hey, more power to you. I mean, good to go.
I think that's interesting. Being in a profession that actually has to be regulated by a licensing body, and multiple licensing bodies, like there's accreditation of the training, and then you have to pass an exam and get a license. I mean, the idea of forcing someone to do that just to be a dungeon master to make, $50 on a Saturday night is ludicrous.
Right.
And I don't know how they could even assure quality.
You can't. It's the main problem. All dodge.
I mean, I've played with GMs who, hey, I'd like to take my hand at GM, and you're like, this guy's great. And I've played with people who will claim they've been running games for 20 years, and it's horrible.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you would monitor and regulate the training and standardization of what makes a DM so that you could certify as an organization, this is a good DM, guaranteed.
Yeah, I 100% agree. That's
I agree
ludicrous.
with that.
No. But unlike some people, I don't have any issue with the idea of the paid GM thing.
There's been times in my life before where I would have been happy to pay a GM to run games for me and my friends. Like, absolutely. Before I started running, that's why I started running, because we didn't have a dungeon master for a while. And finally I was like, fine, I'll do it. But it would have been great to be able to just pay somebody to come in and run games for us.
Let's say, and especially when you think about the hobby, I mean, obviously there's a wide age group in the hobby, and we have younger people and people joining it all time. But when you think of, especially like our age group, right? There's and I won't say how old we are, folks, but we're, in your 40 to 50 age group, right? Or in BJ's case, you're 60 to 70. No, I'm kidding. But in the, I kid. But
some days it feels that way.
Yeah, I feel that way most days. But when you get in your, once you're in the work, you're out in the world and you're working a full-time job and all, you have a little bit of disposable income. At that point, you could afford to do that, and you might not have the time because of work and family and all to do a lot of prep and to do all the stuff. So, it very well may be worth it to pay somebody to do it. And that's okay.
It's kind of like paying somebody to mow the lawn. If you don't have time and you get a little extra money to just not have to worry about, to enjoy the fruits of that, but to not have to, you don't have to do it yourself.
Right. And especially somebody like Jules that puts so much effort and integrity into what she does. Like I would have zero problem paying Jules, and I think it's awesome. And anybody that does hire her is coming out ahead, because she goes beyond. She goes way the extra mile to do it right.
She was a professional entertainer before she got into run role playing games, wasn't she?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
musician and comedian and podcaster.
Yep. Yeah. So but she brings all that to being a professional DM. So she does a great job.
Maybe we'll have to have her on the show one of these days.
We need to. Well, sure. It's just a matter of her life slowing down a little bit, and then the scheduling. But definitely that's one of our goals, to get her on here to maybe talk about professional GMs. That'd be a great topic. Or the other topic I'd love to get her on here for is to talk about, selling. I don't know how you term it. Effectively selling or promoting D&D and role playing games to non-role players. She's been hired to do a bunch of events like at a brewery, or she's gone like TV shows down there in New Zealand, promoting the hobby, to non-gamers. And I think that would be an interesting topic too.
The My Little Pony game for the girl's birthday party is still my favorite.
But it's perfect. Do you think about it? How do you draw people in? Or for little boys, I mean, now we have a mediocre G.I. Joe game you could use, or you could, so there's options out there, right? But speaking of G.I. Joe.
Yeah, speaking of games that you could play.
Yeah, Joe.
We were going to play a game originally, right? That was the plan for today.
Yeah, we were going to do the play test for Batman: The Gotham City Chronicles, which is currently on Kickstarter, but it kind of fell through because of people's schedules. We're still going to do that at some point, and we'll probably record it and do an actual play of the adventure in that play test. But when I mentioned that game to Joe, he was down to play. He very much wanted to play, but he did have a comment about it.
I felt it's a bit silly to name your role-playing game after just one hero. Why is it the Batman Gotham? I was like, do we all play as different Batmans? The pre-gens in the back of the book are like Alfred's daughter, Nightwing, all this stuff. And I don't know, man. It's just is there going to be a Flash video or RPG, a Wonder Woman RPG, a Superman RPG? There's just so much Batman in the world right now. It struck me as odd.
Well, yeah, although
my question is for Batman fanboys is, the longer you, as the guy playing Batman, stall the game master, does that count as prep time? Do you just accumulate bonuses to? That's what all the Batman fanboys say is
Batman. I don't know.
Well, because it's the idea that if Batman can overcome any threat if he has enough prep time. I mean, he takes out friggin' what's his name?
Superman.
What's that? Well, Superman, but what's his name? Who's the big bad?
Darkseid.
Darkseid, yeah, he takes out Darkseid. So which is ludicrous, really. There's no way you would be able to do that. I mean, in comic, obviously, anything by the power plot. But there's a precedent for having a Batman role-playing game, because back when DC or Mayfair had the license for the DC game, you had the DC Heroes role-playing game. But in 1989, when the Batman Michael Keaton movie came out, they came out with a Batman role-playing game, which was kind of a condensed version of the full game. You know,
I remember that one.
Just to cash in on it. I've got a couple copies of that game actually. Still.
That was the first one. That was the first place I'd ever heard of the Question.
Yeah, yeah, and it concentrated on more street level characters like the Question and Batman and those kind. Yeah,
there's a lot of Batman out there these days.
Well, there is. Batman's DC's big money maker.
Yeah.
The new movie was good. I mean, well, BJ and I talked about it on my show. The new movie, they did a good job.
Okay, cool. I like that.
There's some good Batman media out there. The animated series from the 90s is still my favorite moving picture version of Batman. But,
yeah, they've got a new, is it HBO's got a new series coming out that's Gotham. It's like set in a multiverse where Batman has died. And it's these younger heroes.
Well, and interesting enough, that's what they've done with the new Teen Titans show. So spoilers for Teen Titans. There's spoilers for like 2 seasons ago in Titans. It's just called on HBO Max. It's just called Titans. It's a live action show. You have Robin and all the characters, right? Superboy's on there. But in like the end of season 2, I think it's the end of season 2, Batman kills the Joker. He beats him to death with a friggin' crowbar. Because they do the death Robin thing where the Joker beats Robin and puts him in the hospital, and Batman breaks into Arkham and beats Joker to death, and then he obviously retires for good. But so I mean there's no more Batman in that world. I mean Bruce Wayne's still around in that show, but he's not Batman anymore. So
yeah,
that's done the post Batman thing. That's actually not a bad show. It's actually a pretty good show.
Yeah, it's getting. I stuck with it. It's gotten less cheesy the farther it's gone. I think the first season was a little more. They're almost trying too hard to be like, this isn't your kids' Teen Titans Go show with Dick Grayson dropping the F-bomb.
Ooh, nice.
But it was trying a little too hard, and it kind of backed off from that, and it got better.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. I'm looking. They've got another season coming out, I believe. I'm looking forward to the next season. So
God, there's so much money behind those shows, man.
Yeah, I mean it's all about money, man.
Yeah.
Well, and now is the heyday for all this stuff, right? Because you have like The Boys on Amazon, and you've got another season that's about to come out, and they've got what's the cartoon they've got of the Mark Miller thing. Invincible.
Yeah,
Invincible. I haven't seen that, but there's just so much out there. I don't know. Superheroes are just
so I wonder, is it easier / cheaper to do superhero stuff than fantasy stuff?
I think superhero sells better.
Yeah.
Unless it's a big name like Lord of the Rings, which we're going to find out when Amazon's Lord of the Rings comes out. We're going to see how well that does. I mean, obviously the first couple episodes are going to do great. We'll see if it does the Wheel of Time thing and peters out or not, right?
Yeah, I never finished that series.
See?
Well, I think superheroes, they have much more material to work with.
Yeah.
I mean, fantasy is primarily contained in novels. You have to get the author or the publishers. You got to negotiate with them. But Warner Brothers and Disney both own
media
between the two of them, the two big comic universes, and it's pretty easy. And so they start doing that because they just decide they're going to make a movie about one of their characters, and they do it. And then all these other little studios are like, "Ooh, well, let's get the rights to independent comics characters, or just to keep up." So,
and that's what they tried to do with the Valiant universe, right? With not Bloodsport. Who did Vin Diesel play?
Is it Bloodshot?
Bloodshot, yeah.
Or is it Bloodsport? Yeah,
Bloodshot, I think, yeah. But that's never going to go anywhere.
Well, what they're also learning is if you're going to do a superhero movie, it's not 1994. You got to put some budget. You got to hire real actors that can actually act.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't have it look like crap.
Yeah.
They should they should make a friggin' Defenders of the Earth TV show, man. I'd watch that.
They would. The rights for that would be interesting. Although a lot of those characters are nearing public domain now.
Right.
So, Flash Gordon and
Mandrake.
Mandrake and
The Phantom.
Yeah, the Phantom. He's
That would
gotta
be cool
public
to
domain.
kind of. I mean, those are really. I don't think they get called superheroes, but they're the first. They're the prototypes for superheroes.
Well, they're more like mystery men, right? That's your 30s kind of. Not so much Flash Gordon, but the others are definitely in that mystery men category. Mandrake, the Magician, and the Phantom. They're definitely more that mystery men. 30s.
Yeah.
Pulp. But the same era Batman came out of, really. Like the Spider.
Powers.
Right?
Like the Phantom can summon the strength of 10 lions. That's his power.
Mm-hmm. Oh well, yeah, definitely. I mean,
they're subtler though than
right
modern superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just watched the whole first season of the Defenders of the Earth cartoon the other day, and it was amazing. It's like an hour and a half long on YouTube. And
I thought Dwayne Johnson was making a Doc Savage movie, but I never heard about it. It just disappeared. I guess he decided he wanted to be Black Adam.
Well, there's probably Black Adam will probably sell better. Doc Savage is interesting though, and so we had was a 70s or an 80s movie, maybe an 80s movie, Doc Savage, but Doc Savage is interesting because you have the whole cast of supporting characters, but he doesn't really need supporting characters because he's still the strongest, smartest.
Right.
He's Superman.
Yeah,
Superman, but he can't fly. He only needs
it's like Superman with Jimmy Olsen next to him. What was Jimmy Olsen add to Superman? Well, nothing really. So, and that's what you get with Doc Savage to some degree. But Doc Savage is interesting. I always like I've got a bunch of books for like the Spider, and I always liked him. But now those are a little bloodthirsty for some of these modern days, or like the Shadow. Everybody knows the Shadow because of the radio show.
They had that movie that Alec Baldwin did back in the 90s.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Who played the Phantom in that 90s movie, The Phantom?
Billy Zane.
Billy Zane, that's right.
Yeah.
I always get him mixed up with the Baldwins.
I've got the Phantom card game over there. They Kickstarted like 2 years ago. Yep. But,
I always thought the Shadow was a good, interesting character.
mm-hmm.
But some of those characters, it's kind of like you don't want a modern version of them. You want to just go ahead and do a pulpy, set in the 30s, Art Deco themed, images and just let them exist in the time they were written.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's right. Did you ever play so Fantasy Games Unlimited had Daredevils. They also did like Aftermath and Bushido and those games, but they had Daredevils, which was set in that world. And they had rules in Daredevils to do mystery men, to do characters, slight powers, like some psychic powers and this and that, or inventors to do gadgets and stuff. I had that. We had that back in the day. I don't know if you ever played that or saw that.
It's cool. I know how much you love Cthulhu, Jason, but Pulp Cthulhu does that pretty well too.
That's right. I know I frustrate Carl. He's not on the episode to defend himself. I think he gets frustrated when I say Cthulhu's overdone or Cthulhu's worn out.
Is it the game system that's overdone, or is it?
No, I just think
Cthulhu mythos.
I think the Cthulhu mythos. The BRP is a solid game system. There's nothing wrong with BRP with the percentile based game system. I don't necessarily think it's the best implementation of it, but it's a solid system. There's nothing wrong with BRP. I like an Army Second Edition, but that's well known. But no, BRP actually is one of your better systems because it's so easy to teach a new person.
Yeah.
Here's your number. You roll you have 100-sided dice. If you have a skill of 68, as long as you roll 68 or under, you succeed. I mean, it's super simple, right?
Yeah.
At its base. So there's nothing wrong with that. And there are free versions of that out there now. There are, OGLs and things out there. So you don't have to necessarily, you can write your own deep percentile game using a lot of the mechanics.
Yeah, I have a book somewhere it's out of reach that I got several years ago. It was like how to design role-playing games, and it's basically just showing you how to use percentile dice to do everything.
Of course, nowadays it's all advantage, disadvantage, and usage dice. But
yeah. I like advantage and disadvantage, but I've tried the usage dice. And
so
I kind of like with Daniel. I kind of agree with Daniel. It seems like a good idea to start trying to use it, and then you're like, this is just as cumbersome as just tracking the arrows and the rations.
Yeah, to some degree. I don't know. So since we mentioned Daniel, we mean Daniel Norton at Bandits Keep. And he just had an episode that came out on June 1st, 2022. It's called Combat Results and Calls. And he talks about usage dice in that episode. And I'm going to assume that I'm the only one here that's heard that episode.
I think I might have.
It came out today.
No, if it came out today, then.
Yeah, but he talks some more about usage dice and the idea of hit points. So on my show, I talk about hidden hit points a little bit. And the idea of not telling the players how many hit points their characters have, and just a thought experiment, which came from an episode of Gaming and BS podcast. But Daniel's talk about using usage dice and the idea that, maybe the, first level fighter has a D8 usage, a D8 for their hit points, but when they're hit, you just roll that, and then, on a 1 or 2, they're dead. Otherwise, they're not hurt, kind of idea. And then as you go up, you might get more usage dice hit points. So,
and you pull a die out of the pool. If you got more than one, if you roll a 1 or 2 on it, you pull that out of the pool.
Right. So like a 6, like a 6th level wizard might have, say, 3d4 for their hit points, right? And 3 usage dice for their hit points, and they'd be d4 because they're wizard or magic users. So if you're hit, you roll all 3 of them, and then if you got 1 or 2 on all 3, then you're dead. But otherwise, you would, remove any that had that 1 or 2.
Yeah. When he was describing that, it made me think of Risk, how you roll off, the attacker versus the defender, and it's not so much the total of the dice is a number. It's how many 5s versus how many 6s, or who rolls. Right. You pair the die off and see how many times did I roll higher than you.
Well, and that's kind of something about how do you do variable weapon damage, but your more damaging weapons would increase the number. So instead of the usage die flipping on a 1 or 2, a 2-handed sword might flip on decrease on 1, 2, 3, or 4 maybe.
Yeah.
And that's just how you do it. And so
you could even, I don't know, I don't do game design stuff, but this just popped into my head. At a certain point, you could just get rid of attack rolls, and like what BJ was just talking about, Risk, just roll off with the monster. The monster rolls their hit dice, you roll yours, and whoever wins.
Well, definitely, yeah. I mean, that would. There are a couple games do something similar to that, where you just do a conflict resolution where combat's the same as any other task, like head-to-head task thing. But now we're getting back to close to Tunnels and Trolls, right? So in Tunnels and Trolls, a monster has a monster rating, right? And whatever that rating is, say 50, that rating is both their combat ability and their hit points. And then the heroes all add up all their, how many dice they're going to roll, everything. And the monster rating gives the monster X number of dice, right? And basically both sides roll, and then you add up the numbers, and whichever side is higher, you subtract the 2, and the lower takes that many points of damage. If it's your heroes, you split it up among the heroes. If it's the monster, then it just knocks off their monster rating. And then you just keep doing that till one side's gone. And there is a death spiral on there, a very different death spiral. But it's interesting because that's your first fantasy heartbreaker. That's the second role-playing game, really out there after Dungeons and Dragons.
You can definitely see the wargaming roots in something like that, though, where you do attack and defend wargame units.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting. So I don't know.
Because it all just comes down to how much you want to abstract it, right? Like finding that level of abstraction that works best for you, wherever that is.
Yeah, because how tactical do you want to get? Do you want to get to do Rollmaster or Merc, where you're doing, well, I'm going to put this much into my offensive
Right.
and this much of my defensive, and or do you want to get into games where I'm going to parry this round instead of attack, or
Mhm.
and figuring that out. Do you have Palladium where you get, I take boxing, so I get an extra, action this turn, or you got to figure all that out. But yeah, it's interesting.
I think that's one of the reasons advantage and disadvantage has become a popular concept, is because it allows you to do that, and it just gives you a simple rule that says if you're going to act outside of the norm in a way that is a little more difficult, just take disadvantage on your roll. If you're going to do something very creative, it seems like it would make something easier for you, just roll with advantage. And whether that's an extra die roll, or whether that's just a plus, like an ICRTG, it's just a +3 or a -3 roll based on whatever, and
Right.
you're not nickeling and dying. Well, that'll be a +1, that'll be a +2, but then that would be a -3. Well, that would be
Right.
And that's where 5th edition kind of wasn't bold enough, because they could have just stuck with advantage disadvantage, but they decided to do advantage disadvantage plus, and then we'll have a modifier here and there.
the play test, it really seemed like disadvantage and advantage was going to be a much more central mechanic. And then when they gave us the final product, I remember that was one of the first things I thought of when I read through the rules, and the thought time was like, where's all the uses of advantage and disadvantage? And the DM decides whether it applies or not. And I think what they were thinking was players would just start trying to do anything they could to get advantage in a situation. And what I found in effect is they just kind of forget about it. They just assume that I'm going to give it to them when it's appropriate. Because the player's handbook isn't written in such a way that says you should always be doing something creative to try to get advantage, because your DM should give it out pretty liberally.
Right.
Of course, your other option is to do so Pathfinder 1, of course, has your list of modifiers.
Yep.
Which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, because it's still the good thing about Pathfinder, a D20 system like that, is it actually is really simple to teach new people, because it's you have a D20, you take your number, you have modifier, you have this number, you roll D20 to beat it, and when somebody new starts to play, you can put that sheet in front of them, and they can see how it all works, and the DM or whoever can help them with the math a little bit if they need it, but it's real easy to grok. You know what I mean? It's pretty simple. Where once you start adding in other stuff, it gets weird. So Pathfinder 2's kind of veered a little bit away from that. One thing Pathfinder 2 did that I think is interesting is the idea of the 3 actions, and some of the attacks and some of the spells and all might use one. Effectively, it went to action points, right? It went you basically 3 action points, and depending what you do is how many action points it costs. That turn, right? But that's an interesting mechanic.
Yeah,
it's an easy mechanic to remember.
Easier, arguably easier than a regular action of an easy, whatever the 3 actions are, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's interesting what they did with the critical hits and critical misses. How if your attack roll is 10 above your opponent's armor class, that's an automatic critical, or if it's 10 below, that's an automatic critical fail. That happens a lot more than it ever did before in Pathfinder. Crits happen a lot now.
Yeah, because Pathfinder 1, how do you confirm a crit?
You got to roll again and hit. So first you have to, on your first roll, it has to be within your critical threat range. So usually a 20, sometimes a 19, right around there. And if you hit with that, then you roll again and you have to hit again. Then it's a crit. Otherwise, it's just a normal hit.
Yeah, we're just doing 10 above is, like you say, a lot easier.
Yeah, and it happens a lot more, especially, when you're fighting certain monsters, if the party's fighting higher level monsters and they're a little bit underpowered to fight these monsters, which is fun. Things get nasty sometimes, man. Players get blown up.
Yeah, I know. That's why part of why they removed the confirmation roll in 4th edition and 5th edition was, if you hit a 20, it's a crit. It's just a critical hit, because people were like, there's nothing worse than you roll that 20 and then you fail to confirm, and then you roll 1 on the damage.
It's the worst, man. I having to confirm is a bummer. I wish you didn't, but PF2 is it's a dangerous game. It's very lethal.
I have a question then. So we talk about critical hits. What are you guys' opinions on critical misses on a 1? If you're going to play with 20 as a critical hit and there's some special effect for that, what do you guys feel about doing the same thing with a 1?
I usually don't do anything for a 1. Well, so at home when we're playing, the home rule is if you roll a 20, you got to roll again to confirm. Then if you roll another 20, then you roll a third die. And if that comes up a 20, you automatically kill whatever you're fighting, no matter how big it is, no matter what. But if you do the same thing with 1s, if you roll 3 1s in a row, you die automatically. That's our house rule for nat 1s.
Yeah, so the problem with crits are, and this has been talked about on a couple different shows, but this isn't original to me, but crits effectively can hurt the players more than they hurt the bad guys, right? Because if you're facing a bunch of bad guys, the chances of them rolling, they have however many, if 5 characters fighting 20 goblins, well, odds are, the 20 goblins are going to crits a lot, more often than the 5 heroes are, right? So that
happened to me last Friday at a TPK 5th edition because they just got bushwhacked by a bunch of bandits and just got kind of separated from one another, and the bandits were able to gang up on 1 or 2 of them at a time.
Yeah,
rolled several crits.
The good thing about crit failure, though, is it gives you the chance to do things like, even though it's kind of crappy for the player, your bowstring breaks, or in a modern game, your weapon jams, or it depends on the game. Like with Cyberpunk, you don't necessarily need it. Well, Cyberpunk's got you roll it and then you roll another one to confirm, like to see, depending on the kind of weapons can jam or whatnot. The thing with Cyberpunk 2020 is though because it's a D20, you're friggin' 5% of your thing is, but normally with Cyberpunk though, a 1 is just a miss, like an automatic fail, but it's not like you slip and fall on your butt or anything. It's just normally it's just a failure, so it's not that bad.
Yeah, the official Pathfinder rule is it's a 1 is an automatic failure only on attack rolls and saving throws. On skill checks, not necessarily.
Oh, so if you have a big enough bonus, you could still pass the skill.
You can still pass the skill.
And I think that's the way it's been. I think that's the way D&D has been since 3rd edition. Is a one is there's no the failure is the punishment enough. You fail automatically, no question, and only on attack. I think only on attacks. I don't know if it's on saves in 3rd edition, but I know like in 5th edition, it's not even on saving throws. It's just on attack rolls.
Yeah, because Cyberpunk is a 1 is a fail. Period. It doesn't matter what your skill is. Because I know Daniel had issues with that when we were playing. Yeah, I don't think it came up, but he didn't like the idea.
My thought is that if you're going to play with a critical fail mechanic, it needs to match in scope and consistency the way we have a well-defined rule for critical hit. It varies from edition to edition, but there's always a well-defined procedure for if you roll a critical hit. And it's usually the capacity to double your damage or something like that. If there was a consistent rule when you roll a 1, either you can roll to confirm it was a critical failure, or maybe it's just you roll a 1 as a critical failure like we have now. There should be just some consistent rule as to this is what happens if you roll a 1 on an attack. Because what happens is you get the exact same effect every time somebody rolls a 20, and then you got some DMs who are like, okay, well, you know what, you overextended and you're kind of off balance, which means you're going to have a -2 to your AC till your next turn. It's a minor thing. And then you've got some DMs who are like, your 20th level fighter, who is the greatest swordsman in the entire kingdom, misses on his backstroke, and his sword suddenly goes flying over the castle wall into the moat, and a crocodile swallows it. And you're like, what the? Really, dude? Really?
Well, that's true. I know
far harsher than double damage.
Yeah, I know Carl likes to do the weapon comes out of your hand. I've been in a couple games of Carl's where.
And if you just drop it, so you got to take a second to pick it up, that's fine.
So it depends on the game, because a lot of games have critical that they'll have tables you roll on for that, right? And that's one thing that Rollmaster does well. Again, I realize it's not that we're talking deep percentile, but effectively it's the same idea, right? But you have that critical fail or the critical hit, and then that critical hit that now you're going to roll on the crit table. And then of course that's why Rollmaster's so fun, because you have those crit hit and crit fumble tables, and those tables are awesome because you could turn somebody's spine into jelly and they'll flop down, or you could chop your toes off. It's
My paladin,
open-ended too.
Paladin died from having his helmet crushed in on his skull crushed in by his helmet.
Yeah, and those open-ended rolls, you could get 100 as long as you rolled 95 or higher. You keep rolling, or 1 to 5. You keep rolling, it goes negative. So you can go, you can keep going. Which I like open-ended roll. I like that personally.
I do too.
I'm a big fan of Rollmaster, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, BJ? Do you like those kind of things, like the fumble tables, like what you have in Rollmaster?
If they can be done quickly and efficiently.
Right. Yeah.
Like anything else.
Which isn't too bad. So you're a Fantasy Grounds fan.
Yeah.
Fantasy Grounds has a Rollmaster module.
Yeah, I've played in it. I didn't run it, but a friend of mine played it, and the big problem we had, and they may have worked the bug out by now. When you're supposed to be able to, when you see your weapon on your character sheet, you can click on a tab and the table for it opens up. So so you can say, oh, here's what happened when I rolled this. But we couldn't get the tables to load. I don't know if they worked that, because that's not I don't know if Fantasy Grounds really developed that the way they did some of the other rule sets, or if a third party did it. But surely by now they've worked that out. It went pretty smoothly, other than we all had to keep a physical copy of our tables.
Yeah, well, that's how we always play, and that's how normally that's how you'd play Rollmaster. Make go is okay. What weapons you have? Here's your critical tables, and the players have the tables in front of them, and that way the DM's not flipping back and forth looking for the table results. The players have their stuff in front of them, and so it's not a big deal. Like DCC, you have your spells in front of you, so you don't have to page through.
I don't dislike crunchy systems, but if I'm going to play a really crunchy system, I want to. And when people are running the rules, I don't care. But at some point, I feel like the group needs to hit its stride where it can get through an encounter or a battle or something smoothly.
I think if the group, once it might take a couple sessions to get used to it, but once you're familiar with Rollmaster, and like people have their tables handy, I don't really think it's any slower than D&D is combat-wise. I think it goes pretty quick, really.
I know, like you're playing a lot of OSE last year, and I was using Ascending Armor class until Fantasy Grounds, and I just built the module in Fantasy Grounds, and they published an official one. I was like, oh, I'm just going to use theirs because they'll have all the stuff I didn't miss. So we went back to Descending AC because they don't have an option for Ascending AC, and we've been doing that for a couple months, and then the THACO formula in the back of my head from AD&D reactivated finally, and so I can look in the roll and go, oh, you missed, without having to look at the table. And when we first started, I was having to do that, just like when I first started playing AD&D, I had to look at the table, and then after a few sessions, you just know, you can look at it and you don't even realize you're doing the calculation.
Yeah, once you're used to it, I think some of these games flow. And well, that's like declaring actions. I don't think declaring actions, once you're used to it and doing it, I don't think it really slows anything down.
No, it goes so much faster.
Yeah, my preference is to do that, to be honest. I've
been experimenting in the Temple of El we just started, so we've only played a couple of times, but at re-rolling initiative every round for the 5th edition version of it. And players have gone with it so far and not had any complaints. So, but it does change that. You have to be on your toes because you can't go, oh, my turn's over, I'm going to go get a cup of coffee.
It's well, and that's the advantage of, and we're going to wrap up here in a minute. I know Joe's got to pop smoke, but that's one of the kind of cool things with some of these games. Some games involve the players more than others, right? Like some of these games, and you hear this, and I don't know if it's fair, but you hear it a lot with 5th edition, the idea that, well, okay, I did my turn. Now, everybody's turn takes 5 minutes. So, I can walk away from the table for 20 minutes and come back for my next turn. You know, and I don't know how fair that is, really, 5th edition.
I think when you got new players, it is because, well, if you got new players playing first level characters, it goes fast. And then you get new players who level up to 2nd or 3rd level, and now they have a bunch of options. And they're not familiar with juggling all that. If you get experienced players who now are experienced with the system, who are thinking ahead and they know what their characters can and can't do, and then it speeds up again.
Yeah. Well, and we see that, like, even with like Cyberpunk Joe, when we were playing that, you know, Joe knew what his character was going to do. He knew what Rain was going to do before, you know, he planned it out like he should. He was thinking about on other players' turns. So when his turn came up, he's like, okay, I'm going to do this. These are my modifiers. You know, bam, bam, bam.
Well, right, and in my in the Wrath of the Righteous game that you play in, Jason, you're on your turn. You're ready to go. You're boom, and you're good to go, and that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'm too much of a tactical player. I pay attention to what everybody else has done.
Well, no, that's part of knowing what you're going to do, is also knowing what everybody else is doing too. You got to stay invested,
and that's why I almost always wind up playing a cleric, because the cleric is the guy in the middle directing traffic and keeping everybody up and buffing that guy and healing that guy.
You know.
Well, yeah, and like in Joe's Wrath of the Righteous game, I'm playing a monk, but instead of doing the stand, I'm playing the what's he called, Joe?
Tatori.
Yeah, where he's like a grappling monk. So, you know, so I've got to pay. You know, is it going to make more sense for me to grapple this guy and hold him so other people can pound on him, or do I, you know, finish this guy off, or what do I do, or, you know, slip behind somebody because I have a higher athletics or acrobatics, whatever. Do I slip past them? You know, and dodge their automatic the
attack of opportunity.
So we can flank them. You know, and so I do a lot of that kind of stuff. But
yeah, you're good at that, dude. I appreciate it.
Well, until you kill me, we'll see.
Well, right.
Well, your episode was last week on the call-ins you got on the VTT feedback, and I appreciated Joe's comment about the thing that slows it down is when people aren't ready to do what they're going to do on their turn. That's the big.
It is,
regardless of whether it's live or virtual, or whether it's a complicated game or a simple game, when people aren't ready on their turn to.
Yeah,
and it's not hard to be ready on your turn.
Right, be ready on your turn, players.
Or as Joe pointed out, what are we going to do? I don't know. What do you think we should do? I don't know. What do you want to open that? Well, now wait a minute. What about this door?
Well, when you're planning things out, I can kind of, a bit like during combat. Yeah, I mean, like there are things that are going to mess you up, right? So if you have something planned out and the character right in front of you does something that screws that up, okay, maybe it'll change it up. But normally, you can have planned out what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And when it comes to you can say, I do boom, 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 and roll your die and, you know, move on to the next player.
Yeah. And it can be fun. Like some of these, one of the things I like about, like even the 4th edition got a lot of bad rap, but my friends and I enjoyed 4th edition when we got into the combat, because it was like it had some of the best aspects of a skirmish game, where it's like, okay, well, positioning, and I have this ability, but that sets you up to do this, and then you could chain those things together and do some pretty cool stuff.
And like
tactically
move everybody around on the map and stuff.
Yeah,
it was fun.
Yeah,
there was some cool stuff in there.
Yep. So I know we're getting ready to wrap up. Joe, did you have anything you want in closing? You have anything you want to highlight or throw in here? Or?
No, I'll touch on a few things. I really like the idea of the usage die for hit points. I think that's fun.
Check out Daniel's episode, because Joe, appreciate this. I know I'm cutting him off here because I'm an asshole and I'm drunk, but the pink I forget exactly what he said, which is why I didn't recap in this show. But at the end of that section in his latest episode, the June 1st episode, the Pink Phantom calls in and gives the definitive way to use usage die as hit points, and it's really good.
That Pink Phantom is a smart fellow.
That's what I say. Yep. But anyway, back to you, Joe.
Yeah, that's crits are fun. Pathfinder 2 is crazy with being able to crit so easy. I don't know. Is that everything?
Batman's a dumb name for a role-playing game?
Yeah, don't make a role-playing game after just one superhero.
So not Hellboy, the role-playing game?
No, like set it in the if they would have just called the game Gotham Knights or Gotham City Knights, way better name.
It's like Baywatch nights, right?
Right.
But Baywatch nights, right? So we get into season 2, and now they're like supernatural detectives, right? So you have the Viking boat that came to shore, with the frozen Viking on there, and with David Hasselhoff.
Can I put a friendly amendment to Joe's statement?
Sure.
There's one exception: Conan. You can name a role-playing game after Conan.
Yeah. All
but
right.
I think we had that game. It's called Barbarians of Lemurian, and it's not just Conan.
True.
Anyway, I don't.
Odysseus is going to come up with Spock, the role-playing game next.
It's funny. I talk about it in one of my recent episodes. So I started playing 2D20 Conan with Graham over Gaming from the First Age. I have a lot of fun with that. But the other day I played, which I played before, but Sorcerers and Sellswords, which is a game by Ray Otis, and it's a Plundergrounds. It's a lasers and feelings hack. So basically you pick a number on a D6, like say 5 or 3, and if you're all over the number, that's your swords, meaning your physical might and thing, and under that's magic, which it's not just that simple. Like underneath, like magic is also like your cunning and subtlety kind of thing. But the game is more complex than it seems like. But really, that's what you have. You have that one number, and you're all above or below it. And there are a couple other things. But we played that game. And as far as the takeaway from those two games, they both felt like sword and sorcery stories. We both had cool tales, did a lot of fun stuff. But the one game had super simple rules, and Conan D20 isn't like the most complex game in the world, but it's a medium complexity game. Much heavier than the page rules of Sorcerer and Sellswords, but both games gave a super fun experience. So I don't know that it's the rules at all as much as the group that you're playing with.
Yeah, I agree.
So
what do you think?
That's my final take.
Nice.
Find a group you like and enjoy the rules. Whatever rules you play is okay.
There's no wrong, bad fun.
Exactly. Well, I would disagree with that. There is wrong, bad. If you're belittling or making somebody in your group feel bad, it's wrong, bad fun. Or if you're reinforcing bad stereotypes, like through your play, so you're effectively teaching bad habits, right? So that's wrong, bad fun. But no rule set. Like if Joe wants to play Monster Hearts with his group, that's not wrong, bad fun. If they want to use the sex moves in Apocalypse World, that's not wrong, bad fun, right? Although you could argue if you're playing Apocalypse World without sex moves, that might be wrong, bad fun. I don't know. But that might be a more nuanced.
You do it with Apocalypse World, not with Monster Hearts. So Monster Hearts is a game about horny teenage monsters.
There we go.
Joe, I know we're trying to wrap up, but I just remember your episodes on playing the Good Society. There's a I think you have to be one of their patrons to do it, but there's a comedy D&D podcast called Dungeons and Daddies where they just kind of fart around with the 5th edition rules, and it's mostly just they're all like screenwriters in Hollywood that write comedy and stuff. It's people who did Video Game High School on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
But on their Patreon, they've done 2. They've got one more episode to do where they play the Good Society.
Oh, nice.
And they just destroy it. It's just awful, but it's hilarious.
That game is a trip. That game is an absolute trip, dude.
But it goes back to that. If you got the right group,
yeah,
it's got nothing about the rules. I mean, but it's because the rules are just there to enhance whatever you're doing. They provide that way to do randomization or way to give.
Well, I think games like that would teach you, like even if you didn't want to play that a lot, stepping into games like that are very narrative kind of teach you how to how to structure the role play. Even if you do it more freeform, it gives you in the back of your mind a structure of how you handle social interactions, role playing interactions, and times where you're not rolling dice or maybe a couple of die rolls for social skill. It's more just about what you say and what you do and the choices you make. And I think it's good to take a break from our dice heavy games sometimes and just do something like that.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think that's I think it's, yeah, play all kinds. Don't play just one kind of game, folks. Explore, check out different things.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. I want to thank BJ and Joe for joining me for this just ramble. And next week, we will be back with a normal episode. I believe next week's episode, Daniel Norton's going to join us, and we're going to be talking about pre-written modules versus homebrew modules. So stay tuned for that. That ought to be a fun episode. If you have any comments or questions or want to give us a hard time about anything we said, you can use the Anchor app to leave us a message. You can go to the podcast webpage, leave a message there, send an email to cerebrivore@gmail.com. If you attach audio file, we'll play it on the air and make you famous. You can send us an email. We'll read that aloud on the air. If you're watching YouTube, you can leave a message in the comments and we'll respond there. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you, TJ Drandon, for the music, Ray Otis for the wonderful clip art we use on the cover. And we'll talk to you next time. Take care.
Bye-bye.
A Nerd Central broadcast, Cerebral podcast. Let's savor all the flavors from the Simon Hemstrom. The All-Stars and Pods past, Cerebral podcast. You're counting down your last as you admire them all. The sun is burning teeth, oh, so escaping your brain. What I mean is this machine's a freak, and from what I understand, don't look now, this Cerebral is coming, and all that's left is the crying and the running. You can bring it, you can hide, you can bomb in any order. Just another ring of real tossers running for the border. Just a snap like a one, can I stutter? We are MP, always printed butter. You can eat on a baby, and his customers never say it. It's savory, the flavor of the memories it created.